What does your experience and research say here? If there is 30% within the Republican Party that are, let's say they're never Trumpers, they're hardcore, they don't want to see Trump back in the White House, they certainly don't love Joe Biden though, do they just not turn out and vote in November? Or can you see some of them holding their nose and actually voting for Joe Biden? That seems an extraordinary proposition, to be honest.
Yeah, I know we have research that says that the 2020 election was decided by historical Republican voters, past Donald Trump supporters, folks that historically have always voted for the Republican Party, switching party lines, putting country first, and voting for Joe Biden in the 2020
Wow.
election. That's what got Joe Biden elected in 2020. It's why the red wave in the 2022 midterms in states like Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, where extremist Republican MAGA candidates were on the ballot, lost those races. And we're going to see the same dynamic in 2024.
Okay, that's really interesting because I was in the US for the midterms and it was a pretty terrible result for Donald Trump, to be honest, and the people that he backed. But is that still relevant now? Can you still see those same patterns emerging in November?
What I know from doing focus groups with swing voters, Republican voters, especially with these voters that we call double doubters, folks that have negative views of both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they have not yet internalized that they're going to get a rematch of the 2020 election. There's lots of thoughts of third parties. Maybe Nikki Haley pulls out a surprise victory. Maybe
Right.
Joe Biden's not at the top of the ticket. Once voters start to internalize that these are going to be their options come November, and they're reminded that Donald Trump said the 2020 election was stolen, committed an insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. When his legal issues become top of mind for voters as these criminal cases continue into the fall, it will remind voters of why they couldn't support Donald Trump in the past, what they don't like about Donald Trump. We need to get Donald Trump back on the top of mind of voters. And that's why Nikki Haley running a campaign hard at Donald Trump, explaining why he's unfit for office. We see her do well in these states where she's been
Yeah.
able to mobilize the anti-Trump coalition, because we know that when Donald Trump is on top of voters' minds, it is a turnout machine for Democrats.
Yeah, really interesting that you say that though, because the never Trumpers, the anti-Trumpers, are matched, aren't they? If there's 30% never Trumpers, there is a 30% rusted on Trump's our guy, isn't there?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that the never Trump contingent of the Republican Party is 30%. The 30% that Nikki
Yeah,
Haley is
right.
mobilizing right now could very well go back home to Donald Trump in November. And that's why it's super important that groups message to these voters that Nikki Haley understands who her voters are and understands that her support is being driven by anti-Trump sentiment. Uh, you're completely right, though. There's 30% of the Republican Party that's also completely dug in. The always Trump faction of the Republican Party is always going to show up to vote for Donald Trump whenever he's on the ballot. But Donald Trump has created a gulf between the Republican Party and historical Republican swing voters. And every day that Trump continues to become more extreme, become more unhinged, when he posts on True Social about terminating parts of the Constitution, that gap between Donald Trump and swing voters gets bigger every day.
John, fascinating to talk to you today. We really appreciate your time.